Hey, I'm Florian from iProcess, and here in Las Vegas, I'm welcoming Tom Bilsborow from Haywire. So he came down here, and we decided to just sit down and talk a little bit about starting a business. Because when we talked, we realized we run into similar traps, we have similar lessons learned. So what I see a lot, and myself as well, is like, hey, I'm really good in what I'm doing, so why don't I do that on my own? And, you know, basically just like raise your hand and say, hey, everybody, come here, I can do it for you, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing, right? So there's a lot that goes around running a business.
Yeah, it's definitely something where I've seen a few folks now where they want to gear up to this big team from day one.
Right.
And some folks will even go out and get external investment and to run a consulting company, which, like, your product as a consulting firm is your service.
Correct.
Right? You're not building an actual product of value that you could sell. You're selling your
assets.
Right.
So the assets is your people are the assets.
Your people are your assets, and so
move around.
Yeah, and so you've got to be careful with gearing up too early. At least that's what I found.
I found it funny in the beginning when we were sitting down and said, okay, we could charge about this much per hour, and we need about this much to pay the bills. So we need to work this many hours. Yay! I only have to work this many hours. But the truth comes very quickly when you realize that's billable hours.
Yes.
So billable hours versus working hours is a totally different thing. Right?
Yes. Yeah, and you can, like, it's like an 8-hour billable hour day. You're working 10-ish hours, I'm finding.
Especially to get there. Right. So,
right.
So we actually, over the time, we learned that you have to put some percentage of your time into, you know, this administrative work, if you want to call it.
How much of that time do you spend? What's your gauge on that?
I'm afraid it might be at some point 50% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It depends a little bit where you are in the tax year. It depends a little bit where you are with clients. So if you have a lot of smaller clients, you spend a lot of administrative work to get it going. If you are lucky and you get like one larger contract, it's less that. But then there's the other thing, what also a lot of people probably not aware. If you get this like cool contract with the big company, it's a lot of work to get into their system.
Yes.
Everybody has to be aware that it is not day one started.
Right.
So if you go to whatever, a random company, you go to Ford, Toyota, Honda, whatever, and you say like, okay guys, I can solve your problem right now. And then exactly as I say, yeah, but these are the rules and regulations you have to obey. We all have to. And the good news is, once you're done with that, it gets easier.
Yeah.
So the follow-ups, you don't have to go through your 300 pages every time, right?
Yeah, and the hope is that if you enter in a contract with a larger company like that, and you're in their system, then you're going to get continued work with them.
Exactly.
Right.
So because you're in the Rolodex, right? So if they want to know who can do quick hardware prototypes or schematics or whatever, it's like, oh, those guys are in our system, right?
I have a buffer, obviously. Like, that's another get started tip, folks, is that make sure that before you go full time into something like this, if you say, okay, I can make 100 grand a year, divide that by 12, that's my monthly income. No, that's not your monthly income. No. Because you might have zero for 6 months, and then you might have 1 month where you make 50% of your income.
Right, so you have to, this is an interesting point, right? So you are the company, so you have to keep a buffer. So in our case, we are salaried. So we have to make sure we can pay our salaries. We own the company, but we're still salaried.
Right.
So we have to pay our salaries every month. So we have to make sure that we actually buffer that out. And then, yes, you might have, and that brings us back to the quarterly and 60-day net payments and so on.
Right.
So there's, I would say like almost 50% of our income is in flux. So it's like, okay, we have money in the bank, obviously, but we also have like almost the same amount of money that is incoming from somewhere.
Right.
Of course, that's not a hard number, but there's usually a good amount of money once your business is going, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good amount of money that is somewhere in between invoice and payment.
Right.
And depending on who you work with, some companies have those net 60 days. So net 30, for those who don't know, means 45 actual days because it's 5-day work weeks. So net 30 is 6 weeks, not 4 weeks. And then, well, net 60 is 12 weeks. That's back to a quarter, right? So I would never, let's say, like, I would always fight a net 60 contract. I would always say, like, no, let's do net 30, which is already annoying. Some others, especially smaller companies, some pay right away.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, right?
So I give net 10.